have our very special guest with us here today, the beautiful, the talented Melisha. Hi, Melisha.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Tell our patrons how excited you are to be doing a video with us here today.
I'm super excited.
That was actually believable. I'm very impressed.
My first tutorial, so I'm really excited that you guys are with us.
You're gonna be great, and I can't wait to see how you teach these bows. So she's gonna take you through the knot tie and then the gigantic bow. So I guess I'm just gonna leave now. So Melisha, you're awesome, and don't get into too much trouble without me.
Okay, everyone, so first we're gonna start with our knot tie, and this is what I'm wearing today. So the first thing we're gonna do is take our fabric and we're gonna fold it in half lengthwise, and we're gonna pin it all the way around, but we're going to leave a 2-inch opening so we could turn this right side out. And we're going to sew this with a 5/8 of inch seam allowance. Don't forget to back stitch first. Keep your needle down, lift your presser foot, which I didn't do, and pivot. And we're going to stop right here and back stitch and break your threads. I'm going to leave a 2-inch opening here, and then we'll start again. And we're going to stop there so we can pivot again. Make sure your needle's down. Get to that corner, back stitch again. Easy as that. So now we're gonna trim our seam allowances down to a 1/4 inch all the way around. But where we broke our stitches, we want to leave that seam allowance there. So we could turn it in. And now we're ready to turn this right side out. So you could just use your hands to turn it right side out since it's big enough. If you have like a chopstick or like something with a blunt point, you can use that to poke out the edges. we can get that nice and crisp. And now we're going to press it flat, making sure that seam allowance is tucked in. This one. And now we're going to top stitch this little opening that we have, that little 2-inch opening. We're going to top stitch that closed. So we have this little opening here, and we're going to close it by using a top stitch or edge stitch. Okay, so we already finished sewing our knot ties, so now all we have to do is make the knot in the middle of the bow. So it takes a couple of tries to do this to get it perfect. So you just cross it over and then pull it through, trying to get the knot in the center. And you want to make sure that the ends are facing the same way. Sometimes you got to twist it. And just kind of, move it around the way you like it. Make sure it's even on both sides, like that. And then once you're happy with it, you just hand stitch it right onto the center of your dress or your blouse, and then you're done. Okay, everyone, so now we're gonna do the gigantic bow. This one is really cute. It's a big statement piece. I know you're gonna love it. So let's get started. So first, this pattern has 3 pieces, so it's a little bit more involved than the knot tie. So we have the gigantic bow piece, which is this big rectangle. And then we have the gigantic bow tie, which is this piece. And then we have 2 pieces to make the actual knot in the middle for the gigantic bow. So you cut 2 of these. So first we're going to start off with the actual bow, this big rectangular piece, and we're going to put it right sides together, and we're going to pin it on the long edge, and that's where we're going to stitch. So we're going to stitch straight across at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we're going to leave these short edges open. So now that we finished sewing our seam, we're going to roll this seam into the center of the bow, and then we're going to press the seam allowances open. And then we're going to turn this right side out again. You can use your hands since it's a nice big tube. And we're going to keep that seam right in the center. And then we're going to take the raw edges and we're going to put that in the center. So fold it and center it. And then we're going to overlap this slightly. Like that. And then we're going to run a basting stitch through all these layers to hold it in place, okay? So now we're going to do the pleating for the actual bow. So what you're going to do is you're going to pinch the middle of the bow with your fingers like this, and then you're going to pinch the top as well as the bottom to meet the middle pleat. And try to get that even. And then we have some hand stitching to do. So we're going to take a threaded needle and we're going to stitch this together to hold it together. No one's going to see this because this is going to be hidden by the little knot that we're going to make at the end. So if it's not perfect, it's fine. And then we just knot it off. And trim your threads. So now that we have our big bow already basted together, it's already looking really cute. Now we're going to start doing the gigantic bow tie to go underneath this gigantic bow. So the same way we did the knot tie, we're going to do the same stitching. We're going to turn this right sides together. Just fold it in half, right sides together, and then we're going to pin all the way around, but we're going to leave like a 3-inch opening this time. And we'll stitch this with 5/8 of an inch seam allowance like we always do. Just like we did with the knot tie, we're going to trim our edges down to 1/4 inch all the way around. And we're not going to trim the seam allowance where we left it open. And don't forget to trim your corners to reduce any bulk. And then we're going to turn this right side out. And we could poke out our corners with a knitting needle or a pin or something that has a point, like a blunt point. I wouldn't use a sharp scissor because we don't want to go through the fabric, but we want to get those crisp edges. Now we want to press this flat. And then we're going to stitch that little opening. So now we're going to do the same folding that we did for the bow piece. So we're going to pinch it or pleat it in the middle, and then pleat it as well at the top and the bottom. And try to get it to an even pleating height. And then what you do is you bend it right in the middle, and this is going to go right underneath the bow. Now we're going to hand stitch that in place as well. And then we just tie it off, make a knot. Gigantic bow tie in place, hand stitch in place. We're going to move on to the gigantic bow knot that we're going to put in the center, and it's 2 pieces, and we're going to stitch the long edges, so here and here at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So let's go do that now. And we're going to trim a 1/4 inch like we did before, these seam allowances. On both sides. So now that we trimmed our edges to a 1/4 inch, we're going to turn this piece right side out. You can use any turning tool that you like, but my preference is this Dritz. It's called the Quick Turn by Dritz, and I love it because it's purple, of course. And how it works is you just put this tube right through the fabric, leaving a little fabric on top. And then it comes with this, and you just kind of poke the fabric through. That doesn't want to work nicely like it normally does. And it's turned right side out. So now that it's turned right side out, I'm going to press it flat. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to wrap it around our bow. Right through the center. Flip it over. And then we have these raw edges here still, so we're going to fold that in over itself. And fold in those raw edges. And then we're going to hand stitch this in place. Pull it a little tight. And if your stitches are not perfect, don't worry, because you won't be able to see this once it's on your garment. Trim your threads. And there is your beautiful gigantic bow. And you'll just tack it on with some hand stitching right in the center of your dress or your blouse. I can't wait to see everyone with their new garments this month. Thank you.